Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. The time is 1:02 p.m. and we are gathering for a briefing meeting. First on the agenda is a change order memo, and we have Scott Rickenbacker, Director, Construction Project Management. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, board members. Dr. Bernier. This is your April 2022 change order memo update to the board. We have one contingency adjustment for $329.23, which was utilized through the project funding, and that was to work at Estero High School for some minor modifications, some additional trim work at the request of the school, which we utilize contingency money for, which is in the project. Any questions?
Board members, any questions? Mrs. Morgan and Ms. Patrica will be with us by phone pursuant to policy 1.11. Do either of you have a comment?
No, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No
have a great day.
Thank you for that, Mr. Rickenbacker. Next on the agenda is Fort Myers High School artificial turf and track. And our presenters today are Frederick Ross, Executive Director for Operations, and we have Dr. Robert Butts, Principal of Fort Myers High School with us, along with David LaRosa, who is not here right now, Director of Athletics and Activities. So at this time, we'll turn it over to Mr. Ross.
Madam Vice Chair, just a point of order. I want to thank Mr. Ross and Principal Butts for being here today. As you're aware, this is the Fort Myers High School field application and process for the artificial turf and the running track project. This is partially funded by an NFL grant. I've asked Mr. Ross and to be prepared to prepare you for where we are standing financially and provide a project plan moving forward so that you can understand how the work will progress here, as well as make sure we touch on the fact of how during this project Fort Myers High School will continue to be able to compete athletically. So Mr. Ross, great to see you again, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Bernier, Attorney Dupree Bruno. We are here to talk about the artificial turf and track project for the Fort Myers High School. As Dr. Bernier reminds you, we brought to you a board agenda on February 8th where you approved the grant from the NFL for $250,000. So again, we are going into that kind of project plan and some of the details behind that. But first, I wanted Dr. Butts to communicate and talk to you a little bit about the need and some of the issues the challenges they're having there at the school.
So with, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I can hear myself. You know, that happens as you get old, you know, you start losing hearing.
Just wait.
I'm sorry, Ms. Fisher. See, I couldn't hear Ms. Fisher either.
I said just wait.
Oh, thanks. But the need has really, when you look at Fort Myers High School in and of itself being landlocked, we don't have a lot of room for, our practice field is not a full practice field, and that's the only practice field we have. So we need to be able to utilize our game field as a practice field. However, with the conditions of the grass and the field, we're not able to use it. So soccer, other, I'm not sure. I know there are several other teams that aren't even able to, I think lacrosse, other teams aren't even able to practice on our campus. So they have to go elsewhere. They have to go to other areas within Lee County. We have to utilize Parks and Rec and some of their facilities to be able to practice after school. The band has to wait until after football is over with. So football gets done at 4:30, 5 o'clock. So the band isn't able to practice until, 5 or 6 o'clock. And, in August and September and October, what the rain is like anyway. So a lot of times, they get rained out as well. So, we have an equity piece as far as being able to fit all of our it's not, we're talking about athletics, but athletics, band, JROTC as well, they don't have a facility that they can practice on. So once this field is installed, then we're able to practice all soccer, lacrosse, JROTC, band, anybody can practice right after school instead of having to wait or having to wait until, you know, until football's over with or soccer's over with or whatever to be able to utilize that. They've done different things, testing the field, testing the soil as well, and grass being able to grow on there. It can't grow. And we were talking to Sean Brady earlier. This last year, they replaced from hash to hash across the entire field. And currently, the majority of that is still okay. However, just outside of that, it was almost unplayable for us to be able to play in our spring game this last week. And now we're going to have to dump more money into it for us to be able to play this next year for the football season and band season as well. So the beginning of this next season, they're going to have to dump some more money in to be able to replace or, you know, fix the grass so that we're able to play on it this next year. So this has been a continuous thing. I want to say, from talking to Mr. LaRosa, I'm not sure if he's in here or not, I want to say that the field has been replaced, I think it's 3 times in the last 5 years. So, you know, that's quite a bit. And, you know, they've done the tests and grass just won't grow. And then, you know, with the grass not being able to grow and then us not being able to practice on it right after school, I mean, I think there's a huge need. And that's why we put in for that grant to the NFL, and they've come through. And now, obviously, we've got time restraints as well to be able to get things done, getting the disbursements from the NFL also. Okay.
All right, thank you for that, sir. So diving into our presentation, looking at the scope for this project, it is a complete turf replacement of the natural grass on the field. Also, part 2 of that would also be the upgrading the asphalt running track to a 100% polyurethane track. And then the third part is updating some drainage needs that are occurring because of some canals and other drainage areas in that vicinity of the site. So those are the scope of work. Just a little information about turfs and tracks in terms of their life cycle and the management of them. The turfs have about a 7 to 10 year life cycle. A standard 8-year warranty comes with that. The longevity of this surface really depends on the proper care. This package does come with the equipment to, you know, do some of the cleaning and sweeping and grooming of the turf, which extends its value. Same thing for the track. The longevity of the track also depends on the maintenance of it and how well it's kept, keeping people from walking on it with the wrong type of cleats or shoes on, and just really making sure that we're protecting that investment. That periodic upkeep involves washing and cleaning up of bird droppings and other dirt that may fall on the track. In terms of maintaining the turf and the track, we are recommending a memorandum of understanding between the district and the school. This would kind of put in line some of the requirements in terms of maintenance of the field and of the track, some of the requirements that will need to be done in terms of raising money and budgeting for future maintenance, future replacement at the end of its life. On our side, the maintenance team will continue to provide the pest control and other maintenance and repairs that we would normally provide on other tracks at other schools. Looking at the cost breakdown, we separated these into the cost for the turf and then for the track. So this slide you're looking at is for the turf only, and the reason we did that was because the track is something that would normally be budgeted and provided by the district, where the turf was a result of this grant and some fundraising efforts by the school. The total cost for the turf alone is approximately $1.56 million. And those funding sources shown there, with $250,000 coming from the grant. As of the time of this slide creation, the school had secured donations of $800,000 and the district contribution of $220,000 per the grant requirements. Mr. Butts, did you want to talk any of the donation status or anything like that?
No, I mean, we've got pledges from several community members, that get us up around, it's actually over 800,000 right now, which, that's exciting that, we have a community that sees the need as well.
Definitely.
Great.
And then in terms of the track breakdown, this slide shows that cost, and that is 100% provided by the district. This is something that would have normally occurred as we are doing our track rotations and upgrading our tracks. Proposed timeline. Several of us attended the groundbreaking back in April. This evening at our action meeting, there will be a agenda item for a piggyback approval for your approval that would allow for the approved expenditure that is needed for this project, and working towards a completion date of April 2023. Any comments?
So back to me.
Yes, for the
Ross,
superintendent,
thank you.
excuse me.
Really a fabulous opportunity, partnered with the NFL and the grant, to improve one of our high school's fields. Spent some time with some of the ag people as well, who've told me the stories of how far we'd have to dig down in order to replenish soil in order to grow grass. When Principal Butts talks about the fact that you cannot grow grass there, scientifically, that is the honest truth. The soil is just not, it's just not possible. But I think the most important thing is this is a great opportunity to set a standard for our high schools, not only with the appropriate fields of play that are safe for our children, that prevent injuries, that create an opportunity for all clubs and other sports to have an opportunity to march, parade, work with marching band, the lacrosse team, the soccer teams, the football teams. I'm probably leaving out another sport somewhere that uses the field for lots of different opportunities, including maybe Pop Warner or some community organizations that like to use fields as well. It gives us a very durable surface. It gives us a place for not only the students of Fort Myers to have a place to play and to host great home games, but also an opportunity for us to show our community what we can do eventually to provide equity to all of our schools. Additionally, I'd just like to remind everyone it's really important that the track get done at the same time. It is very, very normal, and while you're under wear and tear, you want to replace the fields and tracks at the same time if you can, because they are the construction process for both of those are mutually beneficial. To do one and then come back to do the track creates problems for the turf. To do the track and then do the turf creates problems for the track. So these are surfaces that, while these surfaces are great long term, during the construction process, it's important that bulldozers, excavators, and other things aren't riding over either one of those surfaces. So that's why this is coming to you as a joint construction project. So I look forward to the school board members' questions and discussion.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jordan and Ms. Gittens.
Okay, well, I just want to say thank you. All my kids graduated from Fort Myers High. But I know that we have some some outside track teams that run there or want to use that track, so I think that's really important because that's community as well. And then, Dr. Butts, you had made a mention at the grand opening of how many people actually step onto that field, and I could not remember that number that you said, but it was like enormous because it was all of those that you had mentioned and then some. Do you recall what that number was of how many people actually step onto that field and utilize that?
So we're just over 1,900 students, so 1,950 or something like that. So that do some type of participation on our field. We're around 1,300 of those 1,900 students that actually step foot on the field.
Great, thank you.
Is that the number you're looking for?
Yeah, I know you were sharing all that because,
yes,
of course, you think of football, you think of lacrosse, you think of those individuals, but you're not thinking of all the others that are literally stepping foot on there.
Correct.
So thank you for that.
Well, when you add all the homecoming events and the activities and the different clubs, and that it's 1,300 kids that step foot on that, and or not just step foot, but utilize it in some way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Ms. Jordan. Ms. Gittens?
Yes, thank you. It sounds like a great project. I have a couple of questions. On slide 4, where you're talking about ongoing responsibilities. And Fort Myers High School responsibility is the grooming and the deep cleanings and all that type of thing. Is that going to require any additional training or whatever of the staff that you have currently?
Yeah, the companies that we've talked to, they will do all the training of, our building supervisor or a maintenance crew or our sites workers. And I think what they said, and I'm not sure, I've got Steve Cato, my athletic director, in here as well. I thought they said that the number of hours per month was very, very minimum, because really they just need to run it's like it's pull behind, and they run it up and down the field. And I think it's only a few times. Right. Yeah, so other than pulling that, and then there will be areas that wear out more than others. So you just have to be able to identify those and come back and fill those. So yes.
And I guess because my question had to do with was there going to be extra or additional hours that would have to be covered by staff? But I think you answered that. On slide 5. When you're talking about replacement, and I understand that after a while, because it's artificial, it has to be, is this system, a much, much higher upgrade than what we do for other high schools, I guess is what I'm asking. Is this, because down the road, you're looking at, $220,000 is the district contribution. When it's replaced, does it include, how much is it to replace it when it's time to do that? Is it repeating this slide 5 again? Or what does that cost? And along with that, at the other high schools, what if they wanted a similar type thing? Do you understand what I'm saying, Mr. Ross? If you can.
So, Board Member Gittens, those are great questions. I think first and foremost, Mr. Ross should be prepared and should be able to provide you information regarding the lifespan of these fields. There is a lifespan related to how long these fields are available. It's in slide 3. But I also think that it really comes down also to how much care Fort Myers provides to the field on an annual and ongoing basis. So those are like anything, we get warranties on our refrigerators and cars and our houses, but how we, as homeowners and good stewards of the public tax dollar, how we keep that up is incredibly important. Additionally, I think it behooves us to have a conversation moving forward with our district athletic director and staff regarding equity and access in our athletic systems and processes. I'm excited about Fort Myers being able to kick this off, because what we'll be able to explore is some of the advantages and potentially some of the disadvantages or other things related to a field like this. And I'm proud of Dr. Butts and his staff and the community for applying for the grant moving forward, because it'll give us a test case to look at this possible process for the rest of our athletic fields in our high schools. Mr. Ross, do you want to handle the warranty and some of the other questions that Board Member Gittens had?
So per the slide, that turf does have about a 7 to 10 year useful life, and again, as he said, its longevity is up to how well we take care of it. So we definitely want to put the maintenance measures in, make sure they have the right equipment and staff to do so. And also that standard warranty is 8 years. And in terms of the memorandum of understanding, that will also include thresholds and expectations for the school in terms of them raising money and raising donations for the replacement of that turf when it comes time.
And I understand that, and I think Dr. Bernier kind of touched on it, the equity of resources. I look at $800,000 from private donors in the community. That's like way out of the park for a lot of other areas. Mm-hmm. And again, big picture, looking down the road when you have to replace, getting those funds again. And in the end, we would end up, paying the $200,000 from the district, and then when it comes up again, in the MOU, does that mean we pay $200,000 again, or what price?
So no, there's currently no district contribution for the replacement part. That would be on the school to raise those funds. But again, that is part of a bigger, broader conversation that we can have in terms of the whole district.
Awesome. And don't get me wrong, I think it's a great project.
Well, and we've had conversation with our booster club. Our athletic booster club will be setting aside money each year earmarked specifically for the replacement cost.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, then Ms. Vaughn.
So I think what we're really talking about is the maintenance cost, the ongoing maintenance that the field is going to require. So the MOU will have that detailed spelled out what the school responsibility will be and what the district's responsibility will be in that MOU. Is that my understanding?
Ms. Giovanelli, that's correct. There are very specific responsibilities to be transferred to Fort Myers High School. Slide 4 is a piece of that. It has to go a little bit deeper. It has to go into more detail. Certainly when we do MOUs, there are really wonderful attorneys involved in that process, so the language gets deeper and more structured. But you're looking on slide 4 at the primary separation of responsibilities. Fort Myers is taking on quite a bit of the upkeep, and the district is working on making sure that we take care of our responsibilities because we'll be the ones replacing the track, which, to Ms. Gitten's point, those track replacements are part of the process right now. We are replacing tracks, and we're doing this as tracks become available. I think on a case-by-case basis with our construction and facilities group and maintenance group, we can make some decisions about whether field replacement happens at that time, depending on available dollars and other things. But again, some of our high schools do not have trouble growing grass, and some families and communities have a tradition of wanting to continue to play on grass. So we'll have to take those on a case-by-case basis.
So I'm just curious what the maintenance costs would be, because I know I've heard a lot of stories, but and just so you know, I mean, I'm all excited about. I donated. I bought 4 bricks, so to the $800,000. So I did my little piece, just a tiny bit. But so I'm very supportive. But I just know that the cost can be, quite expensive, and I think just having a reality check of that, so that we all know what the future is for the budgeting for that, obviously. So I'm just very supportive. So I'm not against that. What I do want to talk about is the track, because the track is long overdue. It is only a 6-lane track. It's not going to be any larger. That's my understanding, because that's something that we had a conversation
Correct.
Groundbreaking day, and
Yes.
It's limited, so it won't be actual certified track. Is that my understanding?
Well, it's not, and I don't know where you heard the term certified track.
Yeah,
I mean, you can do anything on a 6-lane track that you can do on an 8-lane track.
Okay.
So we're looking at ways in which we're going to flop it where you have the 100, which is the start line for the 100, and the finish line are currently on the visitor side. So we're looking at flopping it to the home side, and then possibly finding a way to add the 8 lanes to the 100, which is just the start and finish line for that, but not having to do it for the rest. The 400 is all the way around, or the 200 is all the way around, because that's really where you end up getting into it with the drainage on the west side. So we're looking at just being able to do it on the south side and adding the 8 lanes.
So can you explain the drainage aspect of it, and the reasoning that you can't do the 8 lanes all the way around the track?
Well, because then you're so. But on the west side, it's the drainage for a lot of the field and everything that goes into that drain field and then goes into the creek behind it. So then you're dealing with water management, and water management would have to come in, and you're talking about years of having to go in and change some things, and from what we understand, they're just not willing to do that.
Okay, so who's in charge of the water management?
Mr. Ross.
That would be the city.
The city, yeah.
So that day I actually mentioned that to the mayor, because I actually gave him a ride home, and he said it's a conversation that the school district should have with them, and see if there's something they can do. Now, there was no promises made by the mayor, but it was a conversation that could happen, and that's why I love that we're able to have this conversation today, because it is something that they're willing to talk about. I'm not sure it can go very much farther than that, but I think that it's worth having that conversation.
And Board Member Giovanelli, I appreciate that. I think it's great. I can already see Mr. Ross writing it down. So we will investigate that opportunity with the city of Fort Myers and get back and add that to the project plan depending on what transpires.
And I understand it could delay things, so I'm not saying that, but I would love to hear what conversation could happen. So, with that. So thank you for that was what I had regarding the track stuff. Now I have one more for you, Dr. Butts. The Edison Festival Light, the parade starts at the stadium, and we're all concerned that the new field is probably going to affect that. Is that, I mean, we haven't had this conversation, so
Right.
I'm just curious if you could add to that. And I'm sorry, this is not school business, but it's.
Well, but it still is, because that's a big deal. And
If you're that's more than 1,300, just saying.
right, well, and it is, absolutely. But, and they've started on our track, but obviously once they go to the rubber track, they won't be able to be there. But we have other ways of wrapping them around not the building, but other ways of wrapping them around to be able to still participate in that. So yes.
Thank you.
And we've already thought about that too, by the way.
Okay, Greg. I had a little bit of a panic, and everybody kind of worrying about that at one of our meetings, and so it was just an opportunity for me to be able to ask. So thank you.
Gotcha. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mrs. Giovanelli. Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, what a wonderful opportunity, and you've done a really good job of explaining why this is needed in your particular situation at the school. And I have to add that as somebody who lived in the Dallas, Texas area for 25 years, that's not an unusual thing for a football field, or actually mostly stadiums there, to have artificial turf. Remember, it's the land of the $60,000 public high school stadium. Anyway, but the thing that jumps out, that said, everybody has different financial situations, let's say. And that said, I'm going to echo in part, what Mrs. Gittens said. She really jumped out at me, the individuals, the private donations, and it goes back to something Dr. Bernier said about equity among the schools. And actually, I was talking about this very thing yesterday, and there may be, I don't know which schools can grow the grass and where there's a problem and all of that, but that is something that, I'm not a native Floridian, and I realize that those of you who, like Mrs. Giovanelli, who grew up here and all of that, there's for some of the schools, and Fort Myers High School is pretty close to the top of the list, there are huge numbers of donors for upkeep, for whatever is needed that we don't see. So that's one concern that I have, although I wouldn't let it stand in the way of this. The other thing I wanted to ask is, okay, so we have the Friday night lights here. When there's not a home game, is that field being used or something else during football season?
Well, during football season, you also have JV and freshman games.
Different nights, though, right?
And they're played on different nights, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I'm talking about the big game. What's going on the field on away games? Nothing. Okay, so I'm wondering if Lee County has, one of the reasons what I'm familiar with in the district I was in for many years, shared stadiums that can be built up and much more comfortable for the fans. And the whole schedule was built around when one school had a home game, the other school that was nearest or maybe had shortcomings with their as I said, mostly we had stadiums, but be that as it may, they were shared. And so I'm wondering if that has ever been considered here in Lee County for cost savings, which might be able in the long run to have more schools upgrade, especially if they have the issues with it. And, you know, you'd have to do a cost analysis on, okay, this school can grow grass, but in the long run, is it going to be cheaper? And, you know, can we have more people, the band and all of those? So I'm wondering if that's something viable that we can look at so that more schools will have these upgrade options available to them.
Board Member Vaughn, that is an excellent question. And let me make sure I understand it. So there were kind of two parts to that. One is about shared use, which we are not talking about today, nor do I believe Mr. Ross or Dr. Butts is prepared to have a conversation about shared use moving forward. However, I think the other critical component to this is your first question, and I think it got glossed over a little bit, and I just want to reiterate something that Dr. Butts said at the very beginning. As we look at facilities and facility needs and we look towards what we can spend in the classroom and what we can spend outside of the schools, Fort Myers is in a very interesting situation because it lacks the practice facilities. So not only do these fields have to be played on during game day, there is no place to take the team to practice. So the field gets, in a football season, it's practiced on Monday through Thursday, and then at a home game, it's a home game. If it's a Monday through a Thursday and they're away, that is an opportunity potentially for some of the field maintenance that needs to occur in order to be ready for the following week. Because this is not just wait for a season to end and maintain the field. It's a constant upkeep and process. In the other cases with some of our other facilities, our students do have the ability to be off on practice fields, which allows grass to recover. And we've seen that on television with natural turf football stadiums. We've seen it in golf tournaments where a crowd walks across the grass. All that recovers over time as long as you can keep feet off of it. Fort Myers is not in that situation. But towards shared use, we will certainly take that under advisement and certainly talk with our athletic director and other members of the team to see what we could do to maximize the use of our facilities.
Yeah, and just to be clear, again, I'm supportive of this, but when I think about some of the inequities and I think about other schools having this same opportunity, that's why I brought up the shared usage. It may not be viable, but to me, it might be something that can be looked at, especially, you know, if there are other schools that are having real difficulty in maintaining their field for whatever reason.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
Well, one more thing. So, and I don't know if I'm going to be calling it the right thing. So what's the status on, I don't know if it's the weight room or the locker room out there. It's like, I don't know if it's historical or something, but it could use quite a rehabbing, my understanding. And
Yeah, it's under the visiting stands is a JV locker room and the weight room. So, but yes, the face of that is, according to what I've been told, it's historical with the Edison Stadium and everything, and the face of it. So, and other than during heavy rains, it leaking through while kids are working out. But that's stuff that, I mean, we're dealing with that, and we're working with maintenance to try and fix some of the minor things that are going on in there.
okay, well,
But as I became the principal 4 years ago and they were talking about the track, that piece came up, and what they were talking about doing was demolishing the visitor stands and moving them back to be able to make the 8-lane track. And that piece has kind of been revisited with what's going on now, but I don't see, because of the face and the historic face that is the visitor stands, I don't see that us being able to move forward with that piece.
Okay, so, and I'm just going to go on record and say, I mean, while we're doing a major overhaul of the field and that, I mean, I would love to see, I'd hate to see that piece come back up again in a couple years. And so I don't know if that's something that we can look at, and you wouldn't be familiar with that, but it is something that should at least have a harder look at. And
I am familiar. Dr. Butts has been really great about filling me in. Scott Rutmucker has been really fantastic about showing me where that we are in a strategic plan. But we also have to be careful to make sure when we're talking about specifically artificial turf in a track, that we talk about the scope of that work versus opening up to everything that Fort Myers could need, because at some point you have to draw a line because there's other facilities. And I know Dr. Butts is working on the locker room. Maintenance and Barbara Cedino are doing the very best they can to catch up and deal with that. It is potentially a historic location, which puts additional factors into the equations. And we have other schools that need the dollars that you're talking about to do facility work with them, or to move dollars into the education and to ensure our children are being well educated in certain environments where a classroom or other things may be leaking. So there's never going to be enough money to go all the way around, but I appreciate you raising the issue, because all of our facilities need to be studied so that we can determine what the condition that all of them are in, get a numerical rank on them so that we can form our maintenance department. I know all of you have spent time with Mr. Ross regarding his restructuring of maintenance. We need to make sure that we have a prioritization that the community and all the board members can understand as to where our facilities are and why they're being ranked and why they're being worked on in the order that they're being worked on.
And so I'd just like to finish, because I understand that, and then that may fall under the sales tax and that kind of thing. But I mean, Fort Myers is our original high school. It is our basically a landmark school. I mean, and I think we've got schools that are I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn, but you've got a $60,000 field in Dallas, Texas. So let's not go there. Or 60 million or whatever it is. But anyways.
That was in Allen.
Yes. But my point is, we are taking down schools that are not even as old as Fort Myers High School. We're bulldozing them down. Fort Myers probably could use that but we're not doing that. So, and it's a Band-Aid on a school that it matters. And so, and I would do the same, but your schools in Lehigh are newer, even Riverdale's newer, and that's actually where I graduated from. So, I mean, so, it's an old school, and I just want to bring that to the community's attention, that we can't just bulldoze down schools that are not as old as Fort Myers High and forget about it. And just because people think it's, the chosen school, it's not, because it's being neglected. So thank you.
Thank you. And then, Ms. Gittin, did you have another comment?
I just wanted to say in conclusion for me about the equity piece, that when you look at slides 5 and 6, if you were an administrator at a school that was in need of one or both of these items, looking at the track, which is basically being funded by the district, it says, okay, if we need a track, we can go to the district and they can help us do that. And if we need or would like a turf field, that's a whole different story. So, I mean, just looking at it overall, big picture, it kind of tells that equity story there. So, anyway.
Thank you. So, Ms. Jordan.
No, I was just going to say, don't we have two up there?
Yes. I'm aware of that.
Why I said up there.
Mrs. Morgan, do you have any comments or questions?
I have no comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Patrica?
Yes, I'd like to add to the concern about equity. I think Dr. Butts and the job of seeking this grant and then getting the $800,000 in donations to make it a reality. And I will certainly support it when it comes in front of the board for a vote for the additional monies needed. However, we have high schools across the district who struggle with the safety of fields because of overuse and not enough space for kids to practice and late practices and not enough room for JROTC. It might not necessarily be because they can't grow grass. It might be because they don't have enough space for these kids to practice. And some of these schools are located in communities where raising $800,000 is just not a remotely realistic possibility. So I'm wondering if I may, through the chair, ask the superintendent whether you plan to put together some kind of a process to determine which schools need turf fields, which schools need track upgrades, and how those replacements will be prioritized. Thank you.
Dr. Bernier?
Board Member Patrica, that's an excellent question, an excellent statement, and I would say the short answer to that question is yes. The longer answer is we've begun already exploring with Mr. Ross and members of the budget, finance, construction, maintenance team a potential of bringing to the board a comprehensive study proposal for all of our facilities to be examined, like I said earlier in a comment, creating a numerical rating for their needs, not only for the instructional side of the physical plant, but for the athletic side as well. We can certainly add in that study information regarding exactly what you're talking about. Sometimes it's not being able to grow grass, sometimes it's not having enough practice facility, so there's too much impact on the main field. Sometimes, Fort Myers case, it's both. But we have to add, we can add that to the equation. Mr. Ross is nodding for me, so he's capturing it. We can add that to the equation as we look at a comprehensive facility study and making sure that we can be honest and transparent with our community as to what our needs are, and then how we go about utilizing dollars to make sure that parents are seeing their tax dollars being used and the results of those efforts.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, and I thank you for that. I just take the thought of us having this discussion today and then it sort of falling into a black hole where we don't address it again. Those are my comments. Thank you.
And I'll just comment that, first of all, I commend Fort Myers High for applying for the NFL grant and for getting $800,000 in community donations to support this. And for now, the kids to have an additional practice space, a safe space, and more time for more usage. And keeping in mind that athletics are often revenue generating, especially football. So I think that this is a good start, and I am excited about the possibility of a comprehensive plan looking at all of our high schools. So thank you for this presentation today. It was excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda, we have teacher cultural exchange contact. And I've been waiting for this for several weeks. I had mentioned this to Mr. Jodig a few weeks back, and he said it would be brief today, so I'm excited about that. And welcome Mr. Jodig and Suzette Rivera to do a presentation.
So board members, this has been a long time in coming. These are two individuals who've been working very hard, as you've asked them, as I've watched both up close and from afar, to get creative about recruitment, get creative about finding additional resources for us. Very familiar with what you're going to learn about as a J1 visa program. And there are a number of groups, a number of districts throughout the country that utilize this to help support our classrooms and making sure that we have certified educators, diverse educators, and experts in the field working with our children. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Dodick and Suzette for their presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Also with us today on the phone is a representative of TPG Cultural Exchange. That's the company we're working with. Sanjata, are you there?
I'm here.
Perfect.
I don't know how clearly you can hear me.
We can hear you. It's breaking up a little bit, but we know you're only here for backup if there's questions that we need to follow through with you. So,
I'm here for backup.
perfect. Okay, so
If I may interrupt and explain board, sir, it is very, very choppy for us on the phone. It is nearly impossible to hear anything except every other word.
Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
can we do ourselves a favor? The individual on the phone is breaking up. Can we ask our group in back to potentially have her hang up and recall? And then, Mr. Dodig, will you go ahead and begin the presentation, please?
I certainly will. Thank you. So what is a cultural teacher exchange? It is a program, as Dr. Bernier said, that the Department of State has designated, and these individuals are essentially J-1 visas, under J-1 visas. TPG, the company that we're working with, is the sponsor. So the school district will not be the sponsor of these individuals. The individuals will simply work for us. Okay? A J-1 visa is something that an individual from another country gets for 3 years initially, and it can be renewed for an additional 2 years by the Department of State, the United States Department of State. In this case, these individuals are qualified and experienced and certified teachers, and they will be employed by us, sponsored by TPG. TPG is the company that we're working with, and this is their track record. They are in the school districts you see there at the bottom of the slide. Polk County's statistics to the right illustrate that 83% of these teachers on their principal surveys have been above average in their performance. As I said earlier, the teachers can stay for up to 5 years. TPG has 1,500 teachers throughout the country and 200 plus teachers in Florida in those districts indicated. So I'm sure there are questions about the background and the vetting of the candidates or the individuals that come to work for us. So the U.S. Department of State oversees this program, and along with TPG, conduct background checks, including criminal records. TPG has informed us that individuals have been prevented from coming to the United States by the U.S. Department of State, so they wouldn't even be candidates for us. They get screened out before they come here. Well, I would also add that we will have to conduct our own background screening, like we typically do for a local teacher, in addition to this vetting that is done up front by the United States Department of State. They have to have a 4-year bachelor's degree, and their information regarding their education is checked by an independent regulator by TPG, and the individuals, this is very important, must have a minimum of 2 years teaching experience in their native country and be fluent in English in writing and speaking. And TPG conducts at least 2 interviews of these individuals before they include them as candidates. So as we know, we have critical needs areas in Florida. These are the Florida Department of Education critical needs areas, which also mirror our own in our district. You can see them there. Questions about certification. So a teacher under this exchange program receives a PK through 12 exchange teacher certification from the Florida Department of Education. The teachers obtain a course-by-course evaluation of the courses they've taken in their college or education, and then TPG assesses their credentials against the Florida DOE's requirements to determine what area that person can be certified in and what is important to us as far as attracting certain certified teachers in certain areas. So, as Dr. Bernier spoke about, obviously you know we are always in the business of hiring teachers. So we have a number of wins in how this program would help us. It'll improve in teacher retention by adding certified staff to schools. They can stay for up to 5 years. Diversity goes without saying. These individuals are from all over the world that would come here. And we have this year relied on a lot of planning time coverage and other ways to cover classes. It will help us in that respect. And of course, student achievement and cultural awareness come with people coming from other parts of the world. So TPG themselves provides professional development. Of course, these individuals, once they become our teachers, will go through our professional development series of trainings, but TPG themselves provides training for all of these candidates before they come to the United States. They also provide mentors who more than likely would be from the same country and the same subject area upon arrival to the United States. So this is part of their arrival process, TPG's arrival process. TPG provides, not the school district, $1,500 to $2,500 loans. This is typically used for first and last month's rent. So an individual can rent a property. I have been informed by TPG that typically these teachers, especially from the same countries, often live together. There's also the issue of transportation, so they can provide, TPG provides a further loan for a vehicle purchase. So the individuals get to and from work, they help them open bank accounts, and the individuals don't come here to teach in August, in May or June. They come closer to the arrival date, so when they get here, it's just about time to work for us. So by the numbers, a local teacher, if you were hiring or we were hiring a teacher today, we pay for their salary, health insurance, our FRS, and FICA. Under the cultural exchange teacher program, we pay their salary, we pay a fee to TPG. However, TPG pays the health insurance and all the processing, and the individuals do not pay FICA for the first 18 months of the visiting teacher, and we do not pay FRS. The next slide sort of illustrates this. If you look for in the gray at the top is a local teacher who would be coming to work for us. In the middle is the TPG, or the visiting teacher, under the J-1 visa program, and the savings for the district is below that. So you see, for the first 2 years, or 18 months, FICA is waived for the visiting teacher. We pick it up after 18 months, which is why you see an increase in years 2, 3, 4, and 5. But even after the 5th year, there is a significant savings to the district of approximately $13,000 for a TPG teacher. So this is essentially better than cost neutral if the teacher stays for 5 years. After 3 years, if the teacher were to leave after 3 years, they would save us around $9,800. These individuals can be members of the union. They're treated just like our employees. They can be terminated during probation, and they would have to go back to their country. So they're essentially our employees once we hire them. Our next actions following this would be to bring the contract, which has been reviewed by legal, to the board at the June 14th meeting, and then you can see the dates unfolding after that. We envision about 10 to 20 teachers being able to come on board for us this year, and then based on how this goes and how everything works out, expanding that next year. I will tell you currently, and these are openings for next year also, we have around 370 teacher openings right now. So, and last year we filled approximately 500 teacher openings before the school year. So there is obviously a need, and I know 10 to 20 only puts a little bit of a dent in our situation, but it certainly helps. With that, Superintendent's comments.
Just a few comments before I start, and I'm very interested in the board's discussion on these matters. J-1 visas in a program like this are very common. There are a number of school districts on the East Coast, for instance, who have a culture exchange and a J-1 visa program with teachers from Spain. Clark County Public Schools, or the Clark County School District, we were working with individuals from the Philippines who were coming in. It's really a wonderful opportunity to enrich the district, to give people an opportunity, and to help fill our vacancies. I think the most important critical measure of this process is additional certified educators in front of our students, a relieving of some of the need for our other staff members to cover classes and to pick up those additional loads as a certified teacher is not present, where they have to substitute or split up a class. This gives us an opportunity to cover those. I think the financial costs and the savings are nice, but I think the real critical component is the enrichment of the district and this culture, and creating an additional aspect to our district culture, and also providing certified educators to our kids and potentially relieving some of the pressure on individual educators who then have to cover for their fellow teammates and fellow educators. So looking forward to hearing your questions and discussion.
Okay, Ms. Jordan.
And this is Sujata from TPG. The line has cleared up, so I just wanted to let you know that I'm here for questions, if that would be helpful.
Thank you. Okay.
And mine is much better also. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. My comments would be, why would we not do this? This is a great opportunity in the hospitality world. We do this all the time. The resorts bring in people for season. We bring them in. They serve the purpose of what is needed, and then they can stay or they go back home. But I just think that this is definitely a plus, and I really appreciate that you all stepped outside the box to make this happen. This is really a great opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Ms. Gittens?
Yes, I like it too. I think back on, we've had several different companies that have approached us in the past for a similar type program, and that didn't seem to go anywhere. And perhaps because this one is through the government and all of that, maybe you can address that in a second. My second question is, with our increased need for bilingual teachers, how is that? I see a smile, so you're thinking about, we can request that they be, that, so how will that?
Yeah, absolutely. We can certainly request if we need bilingual teachers. I think obviously Spanish is probably the most prevalent language. We can certainly ask TBG to offer us individuals who are bilingual in Spanish. Sure.
And Creole as well.
And Creole. Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Ms. Giovanelli.
Okay, so I'm excited about this because you're talking to somebody that's had many exchange students in their home, and I would like to keep them sometimes because the experience is wonderful. The enrichment of that and the diversity of it is just, the schools, whoever gets any of these teachers will be lucky, and because I think that it'll be an awesome program for them. So my question is, what's the data or any information that where they stay and we hire them permanently and they're able to stay permanently? Do we have that information? Do we know?
So I just want to clarify before I turn to Mr. Dodig, because there was a part about staying and maybe them potentially rooming together. You're not talking about their living conditions. You're asking about what is the opportunity
to hire them
for them to move from the J1 process to permanency.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Dodig.
Yeah, and I think Sanjata can answer that.
Thank you.
No, just Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes.
Hold on, Sanjata.
Mr. Dodig, I'd like you to respond, please.
Sure. So an individual has the opportunity under the J1 visa program eventually to potentially, and this has happened because I've been told by TPG, to become a citizen as someone normally would. And sometimes that happens through marriage or other means. So we don't have the opportunity as a district to do anything about that. So as far as we're concerned, they're here for a maximum of 5 years to work for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board member, any further questions? Ms. Gittens?
I believe that comment was from the representative of TPG that was trying to speak.
That's why he wanted him to answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So,
Ms. Vaughn?
Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I just want to add that I think it's wonderful on so many levels, not just bringing in more teachers, but the cultural exchange. The only thing I'm concerned about, which of course concerns all of our younger, or well, not just the younger, many of our teachers, I noticed there were some provisions on helping for housing, and we're not a city where they can take the bus to work easily and that sort of thing. And I see, they can get a loan, but with the cost of housing, and even if two of them live together and that sort of thing. I'm wondering to what extent would either we as a district or the company, TPG, could help these people that are going to be temporarily relocating here?
Board Member Vaughn, that's a great question. If Mr. Dodig, I believe you have control over the PowerPoint. If you could go to slide 10.
Yeah, it's on here.
And if I understand the question correctly, Mrs. Vaughn, the interest in your question is really about these particular J-1 visa candidates.
Right.
So they have the availability to help with some of the costs of coming to the United States and into our community of that interest-free loan that's provided by the company that locates them and helps bring them to our table and into our classrooms. And then they have further loan assistance available for vehicles and other things. So those are costs that are borne by the company.
But if I may?
Yes.
An interest-free loan of let's say $1,500, when a lot of these places, a lot of the rental places demand first and last month's rent. I mean, even the $2,500 to get a decent place, and just availability. I want to see us do whatever we can, or the company TPG do whatever. But I'm wondering if there are any plans, or if it's been discussed or gone out in, to see if maybe, some rental communities might give breaks to these people. That's my only concern, and it's a concern for them, not a concern for the program, which I love. It's just the housing availability and cost.
Board Member Vaughn, that's a great point for us. I know Mr. Dodig and Suzette Rivera are prepared to do some of the homework necessary, and probably already have, related to housing costs and the other avenues where people may be able to find what we can try to describe as affordable housing within the Lee County, Fort Myers, Greater Fort Myers area. I think also you are looking at the possibility, because these people will be identified and coming together, they will use their available cash to pool together. That's another one of the plans, but I can certainly instruct Mr. Dodig and Suzette to have additional conversations with the cultural TPG and make sure that we continue to try to address those methods, and that both the candidates and the company are fully informed of some of the housing and residency expenses that they can expect upon arrival.
I can add one thing.
One more thing.
Yeah, I was just going to take a minute to see if Ms. Morgan or Ms. Patrica.
Just one thing, if you don't mind, just real quick, that popped into my head, and it came from what Ms. Giovanelli said, and thinking about our own teachers. I'm wondering if we have some teachers here that are looking for roommates, or people, maybe empty nesters, and people that have large homes that, I mean, that's a possibility too that just popped into my head, that I don't know if the company allows that, but could be viable, and it could solve problems for our own teachers.
Thank you. And then Ms. Morgan?
My colleagues have asked a great range of questions. I have nothing to add. Thank you.
You and Ms. Patrica.
I love this program, and I'm very grateful to Attorney Dodig for finally getting to it and finally doing it. My question is, I know that there are several companies that offer these services. Number one, why are we using this company? Number two, are we limiting it to 10 to 20 teachers this year because of their capacity, or because of our desire to sort of do a trial run and see if it works? And my third question is, should we be using multiple companies to scale this up to get the number of teachers that we need to fill vacancies?
Sure. So the first question was why TPG, and we have met with at least two companies At this time, we felt most comfortable going with them initially. However, the other company we met with is also very viable, and other districts are using more than one company. And we intend to, hopefully, maybe go in that direction, depending on how this all goes with this initial company. So that answered 2 questions. What was the other question, Ms. Patrica?
Is there a limit on the number of teachers they can provide to us in year 1, or are we limiting that number in order to determine whether this works?
We are not limiting that number. That is what we've been told by TPG because it's already May into June.
Understood. So it would be too late in the process to start with an additional company to get more teachers for next year?
I believe so, but we could certainly undertake that in the near future here, sure.
Those were my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Dodick. Okay, Ms. Jordan and then Ms. Giovanelli.
Okay, just real quick, and that was just to respond to what Ms. Vaughn's concern was. We used to use a company to bring in staff all the time during the seasons, as I already had mentioned. And before they came, they already had their roommates. They knew where they were going to live, and they bonded with those others that were coming over here with them. So whatever country they were coming from, whether it was the Philippines or Spain or Canada, whatever that looked like for that season, they did the bonding. They knew one another. They came over with the notion of this is where we're going to live and how we're going to do this. And it was simple for them because they're used to doing this. So I just wanted to share that little bit of information that I've had of experience. And we use multiple vendors for ours as well.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Ms. Giovanelli.
Thank you for that, actually, Ms. Jordan, because I was going to piggyback a little bit off of what Ms. Vaughn said. $1,500 to $2,500 in Lee County, I can tell you, is very difficult to be first and last month's rent. But that said, I think we have to think also just about our present employees that struggle with that every day. I would love to see a partnership with some of these rental communities where we could help work out some kind of negotiation deal for our own employees as well as these that are, needed, and say, it's not staff housing, but here's recommendations, boom, boom, boom. And I don't know if that's something that staff can add to their list of things to do, but I think that it would be really important, and it would help, because, the housing market is very difficult these days, and even the rental market. But we have a lot of new communities that, rental communities that are, I see one new every day. Like there's a new one, there Ortez and Metro, and I drive down the road and they're new. So usually there's deals that are, when they're new like that, where they'll have a last month's rent is free, and they just take off a portion of the rent every month instead of actually giving, your last month's not free. It's decreased based on that. So, there's opportunity that I think that we could do a little better and to help secure rent, housing for our immediate staff, as well as the staff that comes from out of the country. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you. And how soon can we do this? That was my last question.
It's due to come before you on the 14th. So as quickly after that. I do have one other thing regarding the financial screening. TPG does a financial screening of all of the applicants, and there is a certain amount of money they have to have in their bank account to be part of the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any other further comments or questions? Mr. Dodick or Ms. Rivera, any other information? And I just want to say thank you for this. It's exciting. It's going to help us meet a definite need. And then I know that there is some Hometown Heroes help from the governor for some of our current employees. So, and I think that'll continue to grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just because we had a sidebar during that conversation, I think it's important for all the board members to know what we discussed. The vendor was on the phone, was very specific with staff about not having the vendor present. I think it sets a bad precedent to have a vendor presenting to you, because then every construction contract, every rubberized track, every field, the vendor is going to want to have access to the board and come in and work their case. It's very important for me, and you can see Mr. Dodig was fully prepared, very important for me to demonstrate that staff has asked those questions, been prepared, focused, and ready to answer your questions. If we had received one that we couldn't answer, then certainly I would have directed Mr. Dodig or Suzette to go back to the vendor, and we would respond back to you in the normal processes where we feed back information to you. So the question here was about, do we engage with the person on the phone? And I explained that to the chair, sorry, I keep calling her vice chair because she's, never mind, to the chair of this particular meeting. And I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what Mary and I were talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Dodig.
You're welcome.
And Ms. Rivera. And next on the agenda is first reading and briefing of policies. And at this point, Attorney Kathy Dupree-Bruno.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have several policies that are here before the board today. 6.041 purchasing card policy, 6.011 competitive solicitation bid protest. This is a Neola policy, and that's replacing our 6.08 policy. 6.0712 is the cone of silence policy. 6.0713 is the contractor discipline policy. 6.073 is the commercial non-discrimination policy. And then we are revising 6.07 to make it in line with the new policies, and as I stated earlier, replacing 6.08. The board has had an opportunity to review those policies, and I will take any questions on board policy 6.041. And I know Ms. Brophy is getting that up on the screen. I will say with regards to 6.041 in line 8, that we're going to remove MasterCard and just put credit card so that it could be more encompassing should we change from MasterCard to another type of vendor. And Ms. Gittens? I think Ms. Gittens.
I noticed an overall question. I noticed on some of them at the bottom it mentioned either our legal services or Neola. So the ones that are Neola, are there suggestions that we have those items as a part of our process?
So one thing that we have to remember with regards to Neola is that Neola expects us to use their policies in order for us to have the indemnification, which means that if there is a legal challenge to a policy, they will represent the district. For that, we need to use their policies. Now, there are times when there are additional policies that the district comes up with, but Neola has to approve those policies. The policies that are brought forth to you today are policies that are either Neola policies or policies that Neola provided us after vetting, that maybe another district had some type of template similar that Neola has already approved. So those are the policies that are brought for you today. Now, the ones that say Neola copyright, that means that's when Neola actually copyrighted that policy. And the ones that say legal services are policies that Neola has vetted, but it's coming from our office.
Okay, so they have already gone through this for all of
Yes.
the legalities.
These are all Neola policies,
But we-
or approved by Neola.
Right, but we came up with these policies.
The ones that say Office of Legal Services came from our office. Those are some best practices that we've seen in other districts that use Neola. And then, of course, there's some that are specifically Neola.
Okay, and I understand that. I guess, you know, the use of a purchasing card, I would think that they would have a standard
Right.
policy already in place. since every district has to have some type of policy for that. I just found that interesting that they didn't have one already. Thank you for that answer.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding 6.041?
And this,
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes, please. Ms.
I'd
Patrica?
like to, through the chair, ask the superintendent if there will be a review of P-card processes or procedures, either creating new processes or procedures or simply reviewing what is placed to make sure that they are in line with this policy, number one. Number two, I believe we had an audit finding regarding P-cards. It was either through our internal auditor or through the Auditor General. I can't remember which. If so, I'd like to ask that we pay close attention to that finding to ensure that any new any new procedures or processes include any actions suggested in that audit finding. Those are my comments on this policy. Thank you.
So Board Member Patrica, I believe that there's something I do need to respond to, and that is the question as to whether these purchasing card policies would change the purchasing card program policy and procedure guide, most recently updated in March of 2022. The short answer to all those questions is every time we look at a policy, what lies beneath them are procedures and processes that then staff follows to be in compliance, so that we will always, and that was explained yesterday at the workshop and has been explained again as I've watched both far away and close by, that every time you change a policy, there's aspects of the procedures and the way staff goes about doing work that also need to be revised, which really is, quite honestly, the heavier lift. Your policies give us the direction, and then we have to make sure we put things in place in order to comply. So I guess the short answer to that question is yes. Every policy will require us to go back and look at any type of procedural manual or procedural steps and ensure that we're in compliance with the new language.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier.
And just to add to what Dr. Bernier said, in our Neola process, they will also provide suggested processes as well as forms that go along with the policies.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any other questions or comments regarding 6.041? Okay, hearing none. You want,
I just have one. Are we saying that we don't currently have a policy on using purchasing cards?
No, there is the guide and the policy that goes along with that. That was part of the backup materials for this meeting. It was last updated March 11, 2022. So in crafting this policy, we wanted to make sure that both documents were in line. So we do have a guide for staff. There is training. All of those good things are there. Last updated in March of 2022. But now we also have a board policy that discusses it and the expectations of the board.
Okay, I guess because, I mean, normally I'm used to, if it's all red, it's something new.
No,
that we have not done. And this is all new as a board policy, but we had a staff policy.
6.041 is a new board policy. In your backup materials, you'll find what is called a policy and procedure guide that is used by the administration for purchasing cards. And that policy and procedure guide for the purchasing card program was last updated March 11th, 2022.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli.
And so I just want to thank Ms. Patrica for bringing up, because it was the Florida auditor that brought up the P card. It was in the audit of, I think, 2018. And I didn't realize that we didn't have a policy. So I'm glad to know that we have a policy now and to go with the guide. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bruno.
Thank you. The next one is 6.07. This is an existing policy on purchasing and bidding. The only change in this is in line 120 through 136, which is about lobbying and communication during the competitive solicitation process. The reason that is being removed is because we now have a new cone of silence policy that will address that.
Okay. Board members, questions, comments?
On which one? I'm sorry.
6.0711.
6.07, which is our already existing purchasing and bidding policy. The only change in that policy is to take out section 7, which is line 120 to 136.
Oh, okay, I see it now.
Which
Sorry.
deals with communications during the competitive solicitation process with individuals, because now we will have a cone of silence policy that elaborates that a little bit further.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Patrico or Ms. Morgan, any comments?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you.
And the next policy is 6.0711. This is a new policy, and this is a Neola policy, copywritten in 2012. It was tweaked after speaking with staff to make sure that it was in compliance with some of our district protocols, as well as just to ensure that it's the same. This policy will be replacing 6.08.
Okay. Ms. Gittens?
Just looking at the bottom of this, am I missing it, or does it say that this is a replacement for another policy? I see that it says Neola and the statutory authority and all of that. Does it state on here that this is a replacement for another policy that's existing?
So what we will do is, as we go through it, we will rescind Board Policy 6.08. So we don't necessarily have to put that it's replacing 6.08 in this policy, because it will automatically be done when the board votes on it. So when it's adopted, it will be adopted 6.0711, and 6.08 will be rescinded. And that's what we're going to do once we finish all of the Neola policies. At one time, we will go ahead and rescind all of the policies and then adopt the new policies once we finish sometime after the entire process is complete. But in the interim, there are some policies we want to make sure are in place. So that's why we have these policies coming before the board.
Well, since this is a draft, and for lack of any confusion, could we, in the draft, while we're working on this, be able to say this is a replacement for? I mean, just in case there's any confusion. I don't know if you can legally do that.
We can maybe, Ms. Gittens, what we can do is maybe after line 170 add something that says that this is replacing the original.
That's what I'm asking.
I'll put something on there.
Okay. Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. I just had a question. When it says Neola 2012, is this when they started the company, or?
No. When you see Neola 2012 and Neola whatever date, that is the date that Neola actually copy-wrote the policy.
Okay, so
policy
this is a 10-year-old policy?
From Neola that they regularly update, but because there hasn't been any changes from 2012, that's the date of the copyright. And if they needs to be updated, they will, that's part of our service to have it updated. But this is when this policy was originally copywritten.
Okay, so so just for my knowledge, this is a 10-year-old without change, that has not had any changes. And is there a mechanism that you're using to decide which policies that you are doing this on?
So these are policies that, based on different things that have occurred, that we feel it's necessary to bring forward to the board, because some of these policies may have prevented some legal issues from happening. So these are some of the policies that proactively will help us in the future. Okay. But there are a lot of policies. We have to start somewhere.
Correct. So are you choosing them or are they choosing them?
No, Neola's not choosing them. These are policies that, based on some of the things that have occurred, recommendations are being made to get these policies for May and June. And starting in July, Neola's going to come in and start with the process of the bylaws and move forward. Now, in the interim, there may be some other policies that we just need to get in place right away because of whatever issues, for example, the law changes or anything else. That's how we are proceeding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Want to proceed, Ms. Bruno?
The next one is 6.0.
Excuse me.
Yes, Ms. Patrica.
If I may. Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, are we on policy 6.0713, contractor discipline?
We're on 6.0711 and then moving to 6.0712.
Okay, the question is the next policy. Thank you.
6.0712 is the cone of silence. This, as you can tell, is a little bit longer than what we had in our original 6.07. This is a Neola policy as well, copywritten in 2012, and it makes it very clear in terms of the cone of silence for vendors and during purchasing and the competitive solicitation process. Any questions on 6.0712?
I don't see any hands. Ms. Morgan and Ms. Patrica?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next policy is 6.0713. This is with regards to contractor discipline. This policy is necessary because we have had some incidences where there have been some reasons to take contractor discipline measures or what have you, and we have not really had a policy that described anything between the award of a contract to debarment. We have a debarment policy, but that's the most extreme measure, and we have not had anything in between. And statutorily, we are allowed to take other disciplinary measures. So this will this creates the policy, and then the superintendent can designate on how to implement this policy. This policy allows the superintendent to come up with some very specific guidelines and some recommendations on how to move forward with any type of discipline should it be necessary.
Ms. Gittens?
I guess, my question continues to be, like with the cone of silence, the one before, what do we do now? What have we been doing to make sure that these things...
Right. So with regards to the cone of silence, all we had was that one section in 6.07 that talked about lobbying. So the complete cone of silence policy was something that was necessary to make sure that all contractors understand in terms of contacting staff or any other individual working for the school district. So that's why we wanted to bring this policy forward. And then with regards to the contractor discipline, we did not have anything for anything in between from the time of the award or even during the process, during the competitive solicitation process itself. The only thing that we had was debarment, and debarment is a very severe discipline. So we needed something in between, because we have had a couple, at least 2 incidences where something has happened that we've needed to step in for some type of issue. So this allows us to do that, and then allows the superintendent to move forward with trying to come up with some very specific guidelines on how to deal with these contractor discipline issues.
So basically, when we're looking at these, there are some that are going to be replacement, there will be new ones, there will be replacements, and there will be some that are expanded by taking one piece out of an existing policy and making a whole new policy. Is that correct?
That's part of it, yes, Ms. Gittin. 6.07 had I believe it was subsection 7, that discussed the lobbying. So that cone of silence is out. That lobbying section is out, and now we have a completely new policy that is a Neola policy that discusses the cone of silence.
Okay, thank you.
And just again, these policies are either Neola policies or vetted by Neola. So that's very important. For the next month, you'll have additional policies, and just know that they're either Neola policies or vetted by Neola. So they won't be changed when we do our big transition.
Ms. Giovanelli?
So, and these are policies that other districts have?
Yes.
And that we just lacked?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan or Ms. Patrica?
Yes, I have 2 questions on this one, if I may. Line 17 doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I read it together with lines 13 and 14. So affiliates means business concerns, organizations, or individuals that directly or indirectly a third-party controller has the power to control both. I don't understand what that means.
So we had basically what it means that we've had a situation, for example, where you would have, let me think how to explain this. Basically, you want to have any individual that has some type of business connection with that contractor. That's basically what this means. We've had situations where somebody may not be the full owner of the business, however, has enough affiliation with that business that their actions could fall under 6.0713, if that makes sense.
It does. So could we change the language to reflect that? Because as it reads now, I don't believe it says that.
So you're looking at line 17, a third-party controller has power to control both. Is that what you're referencing, Ms. Patrica?
Correct. And when I read it with that introductory paragraph, which I believe is how it's supposed to be read, right? Like you read the introductory paragraph first, and then you read it with number 1, and then you read the introductory paragraph and you read it with number 2. It just doesn't say what you just said. I don't think, in my interpretation.
Example. So what I'll do is go back to staff, and we'll go ahead and review line 17 to see if we can make it a little bit clearer.
Madam Chair.
Makes sense. Yes. Ms. Gittins and Ms. Jordan.
I think she had a second question.
Oh.
I do have a second question.
Okay, continue, please, Ms. Patrica.
Thank you. Lines 96 and 97. I'm not sure what, quote, for reasons beyond the contractor's control means. Could you please provide an example there so I can have a better understanding of what that means?
Okay, let me read it.
Which line?
96 and 97.
Lines 96 and 97.
Okay.
Actually, they have to be read with the whole paragraph, but it's that specific part that I didn't really understand.
Yes. So basically, what this paragraph is talking about is to provide a little bit of latitude to the superintendent if there is an emergency that affects public health, safety, or welfare, and an action needs to be taken with a particular vendor that may have been sanctioned. So that's in essence what this is talking about. We want to be careful in the sanctions that we do not renew a contractor or extend a subcontract or anything like that for any contractor that may be suspended, revoked, or debarred. However, there may be an emergency situation where the superintendent needs to be able to make the determination that there's a public health, safety, or welfare concern, and this vendor is the only person that can actually do whatever the work is that needs to be done.
Yeah, no, I got that part of the paragraph. The part that I'm not clear on would be a reason beyond the contractor's control. Can you provide an example of that?
Earthquake. Earthquake.
So you got to read the whole thing together. So it's referencing approves an extension due to the delay or for reasons beyond the contractor's control. That's that part that goes together, that the superintendent can go ahead and renew or extend. And that last sentence actually goes together, approves an extension due to delay or for reasons beyond the contractor's control.
Which would be like a hurricane or something.
Well, what she's referencing is not necessarily the hurricane part. She's referencing that the contractor may have delayed or may have really delayed. And this is referencing that if it is beyond the contractor's control. That's what this is referencing. You got to read the whole thing together. Approves an extension due to delay or for reasons beyond the contractor's control. And if Ms. Patrica would like, I can go back to staff and we can review that language as well, but that's what it means. That's what it's trying to convey.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may, I'm not clear on what an example of that would be. So if we could ask the board attorney to please go back and get with staff and provide an example, because I did read it together, and the whole paragraph makes sense to me except for that last part. So, before we can go ahead and approve a policy, I'd like to understand what it says, and that specific piece doesn't really, I'm not getting it. I might be being dense, but I'm just not getting it. So if we could ask the board attorney to come back to staff and come back with an example, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vaughn, then Ms. Gittens.
Okay. Two things. Number one, could an example be supply chain?
Yes, that could be an example, yes.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of besides natural disasters. All right. I know that we've had some vendors, let's just make a scenario that we have a vendor who has been suspended for a certain project or certain kind of, let's say a roof. And then that particular vendor has affiliate companies, and maybe the affiliate company deals with, I don't know, landscaping issues, landscaping. Is that vendor with affiliate companies who's already suspended for one thing, is there somewhere in this that it connects that vendor should also be suspended for any of his or her affiliate companies? Because we have several examples of that where vendors sometimes can form companies very quickly.
So that is in line 106.
106.
Talks about future contracts work, as well as we've had situations where vendors end up being subcontractors.
Right.
So that's addressed in line 111. And then 126 also talks about even a 10% ownership could subject one to this policy.
Okay, and this would seem to me that it would be something new.
Yeah, this entire
Well, I know, but in terms of historically what we have done as a district, this would be something new.
This is completely new. I mean, we've had to patchwork things as they come up, but we've never really had a policy that addresses it. And it's important also for the board to recognize that this is just the overarching policy. There will be, the superintendent will designate a team to work on the specific guidelines on how this policy will be effectuated.
Okay, and I very much like the fact that we are covering that possibility, of course, within the jurisdiction of the superintendent, because we have had instances come up more and more frequently where someone will form an affiliate company or subcontract, and I think that defeats the concept of why a vendor may be disciplined. So I just wanted to make sure that there were places in there that would cover us for these newly formed companies.
And that's also addressed in lines 19 to 23.
Okay.
That discusses control and defines a little bit further control.
Great, I love that.
Me too.
Thank you.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Ms. Gittens.
Thank you. In regard to the question that Ms. Patrica had earlier about lines 16 and 17, in reading that, the confusion for me is that in the definition paragraph at the beginning, it mentions contractors. It does not mention affiliates. So then to jump right into the definition of an affiliate and then the definition of a contractor is what's a bit confusing. And as we were saying, that first paragraph is what it's all about. So if somehow or another in that introductory between 6 and 8, it would, even if it said contractors or affiliates, because what you're saying further along is that affiliates can also have the right and the ability to cause it to, to be disciplined. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we could do that. I'll talk to staff and we can clarify that.
Yes.
Ms. Gittens, just seriously trying to understand, I mean, that's the only reason I'm asking this question, because I want to make sure. The way I'm reading this is right, and I'm just checking my thinking with yours. A contractor can get in trouble, which will affect affiliates of that contractor, potentially. But also an affiliate could get in trouble that could jeopardize the contractor. Is that what you're...
Exactly, and if both of them are culpable, as stated in this, and the affiliate explanation is first, but it's not mentioned anywhere in the definition, in the explanation at the beginning about an affiliate.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. That's why I was just seriously just seeking to understand, I promise.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bruno, you want to proceed?
Thank you. 6.073 is the Commercial Anti-Discrimination in Business Operations and Practices. This is a policy that is highly recommended. We do have issues where vendors believe they have been discriminated against, or staff believes that vendors have discriminated. So this would be that policy to address those concerns. And then finally, the last I don't know if there's any questions on the last
I
one.
don't see any hands. Ms. Morgan and Ms. Patrica, any comments on this one?
Yes, I have a question on this one, please.
Go ahead, Ms. Patrica.
Thank you. Line 78. Does this line mean that a vendor must have its own non-discrimination policies and provide proof of the same to procurement as part of the package they submit if they are to be awarded a bid?
Ms. Patrica?
Ms. Fisher?
Ms. Patrica? We cannot understand what you're saying. You're breaking up.
Ms. Fisher?
I'll hang up and come back in.
If Ms. Patrica wants to send in her comments or concerns and questions, and I can take a look at it, because again, I couldn't hear what she was saying.
Okay.
She says she's calling back in.
And she's going to call back.
Madam Chair, can you hear me now?
Will you say something else, please?
Madam Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes.
May I proceed?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so line 78, does this portion of the policy mean that a vendor must have their own non-discrimination policies and provide proof of same to procurement as part of the packet they submit if they are to be awarded a bid?
Line 78. Thank you.
80, yeah.
Certificate of compliance
Yes.
with the policy.
And there is most of our contracts actually have some language in there about non-discrimination.
Great, thank you. And then line 105, what is the EC, please?
Equity coordinator.
So should we have that written out that first time we use the letters EC?
I believe it is, but I will double check, but I thought that it was spelled out, and I'll have to see where it is spelled out the first time.
And then moving on to lines 112 through 114. Let me pull that up so I can read it. An individual or business entity that has a good faith belief that it has been the subject of discrimination by a district-approved vendor based on the protected categories listed within this policy in writing to the EC. I don't know what that means.
So that is referencing B, complaints, but we can clarify that to make sure that it notes complaint in writing.
That was not a bad side. I was just taking a deep breath. Line 120. I'd like the board to consider why we have and whether we should remove process from the policy. We had this discussion earlier. We as a board set policy. The superintendent creates the processes to implement those policies, and then we hold the superintendent accountable for same. I'm not clear on why we're setting forth processes in a policy document. It seems to sort of tie the superintendent's hands. If a piece of the process is not working, he's got to come back to the board for approval in order to change and make it work better for the district and all of that. I'd like the board to please consider removing the process language from the policy.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question regarding that?
Yes, Ms. Gittens.
Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I thought that this section is about the EC and their specific process, not a process that we have. Am I incorrect in that?
We'll let Attorney Bruno respond to that.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, I was...
Oh, no, I just said, I thought when this was talking about the EC's process and not our process.
That's correct. So what Ms. Patrica is referencing, there is an investigative process that's embedded in this policy. And normally we do not have processes embedded in a policy. However, in this particular policy, the template that this was based on, which is another successful school district in the state of Florida, has that embedded so that it's part of the policy, and vendors and staff and everyone has readily accessible access to it. It's somewhat similar to our investigative policy and board policy. I think it's 5.311, which talks about our investigative policy and that process. It's very similar to that, and that's why it's in there. But this is to the will of the board if they want to remove it or not.
And may I continue with that? What is the, how does that correlate, like the 180 days and all that, with the EC's investigative process? Is there a time limit?
It gives that process to everyone so they know this is how it's supposed to be done.
Right, so this is not our specific policy.
So this is directing the superintendent to direct the EC to be able to make sure they follow this process, yes.
Exactly.
And again, it's very similar to what we have in our investigative process under 311, which is our HR investigative process, in terms of having very specifics in that policy.
Okay.
But again, it's to the will of the board.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I
Continue.
direct the question to Dr. Bernier?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Bernier, what is your opinion about embedding practice protocols in policy, even in special situations? Thank you.
Board Member Morgan, I've read this policy a couple of times. I think in this particular case, since it's so contractually related to how we do business with various vendors, I think it's important for vendors to understand what our policies, and in this case, it could be relevant. I think it's relevant to have this process outlined. I think potentially there could be a line added that says subject to revision, because we could wind up with if the statutory authority changes, then the whole policy would change. I think so what I'm getting at is, for transparency's sake, I think it's important for the people that we contract with in business operations and practice and our commercial vendors to understand we have a process in place to deal with this. It doesn't hurt us, but I think the aspect of is making sure that our policy and procedural manual for these situations, every time the policy is updated, that we make sure that we update those procedures as well. I know where this policy is coming from. It is a successful district, and they use it in that manner to make sure that the people they're contracting with understand the process the district will go through if there's a violation.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Giovanelli.
So thank you for that.
I have more questions. Would you like me to take a break and come back to me, Madam Chair?
No, I'm sorry, Ms. Patrica. I didn't realize that. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So lines 128 through 130, again, I'm stuck on the last part of the paragraph there. I'm not sure what "and its contractual terms with the board" means when read in the context of the entire paragraph.
What line?
128,
It's already.
130, under investigation.
Oh, I heard that.
So in our contracts, There are certain provisions in there with regards to cooperation with investigations, and there may be some other contractual terms. That's why that language is in there. We actually have very specific language in our ITNs and our ITBs. I mean, there are contractual terms that are part of these documents.
Okay, so a business entity or district-approved vendor that voluntarily fails to cooperate with the investigation will be subject to its contractual terms with the board. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you. Again, Madam Chair, I have more questions. Are you sure you don't want to move on to another board member and then come back to me?
Why don't you go ahead and finish?
Okay. Lines 147 through 149. Let me call those up and see what my question was there. The EC should consult with the complainant to assess their agreement to any appropriate action in making such a determination.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I know what that means.
So the equity coordinator should talk to the vendor. And let me go back and read the first part of this. Yeah. So basically what this is talking about, you got to start at line 144. So sometimes we have situations that are urgent and an immediate response may be necessary, and this is what this is discussing. Once the complaint is received, the EC talks to the department head, and then they determine whether or not any type of initial action is necessary in the initial investigatory phase. And think about it similar to what we do in our HR investigation process. If there is a concern about public safety or health or welfare, their HR may take an immediate stance in the initial investigatory process prior to the final outcome of the investigation. So that's what this is in referencing. And then the EC would communicate with that party and say, hey, this is what we think we need to do in the interim while we're conducting the investigation. Do you agree or not agree? And then if there is a disagreement, obviously it would then go to the superintendent for him to make the final recommendation as to how to proceed.
Okay, thank you. I only have two more. Line 184. I'm wondering why we're using probable cause as the bar. It seems to me that this portion of the policy is a determination of wrongdoing has been made, and so the equity coordinator will forward the completed investigation to the superintendent or designee for recommended sanctions. Probable cause seems to be a very low bar if we're going to be instituting sanctions.
And this will kick into our other policy that talks about discipline with the parameters that will be drafted for the guidance of that. We need some type of legal threshold. So the equity coordinator is not there to make the ultimate decision as to what will happen. The equity coordinator will say, we've met this basic threshold. Superintendent, here it is. This is what I found out. Then the superintendent will move forward with, if he's going to implement the discipline committee or however he's going to move forward with the guidelines and how to deal with this. So these policies all go hand in hand to ensure a smooth process across the board.
So could we reference that policy there, number one, and number two, again, probable cause seems to be a low bar for a determination of wrongdoing. Probable cause is simply there's enough facts to determine that something wrong may have occurred. But it seems that if we're moving into sanctions, it should be some bar higher than probable cause.
We can certainly reference the discipline policy, but we have to read this all together. If a finding of probable cause is determined, the EC will forward the completed investigative report to the superintendent or their designee to review the findings and recommend sanctions and a final disposition of the case. So I think it's appropriate to go ahead and put in the contractor discipline policy in that section to make it clear that once that happens, then it goes to then the other policy would come in line, and then what happens in terms of discipline of the contractor will then be decided through that policy. So we can clarify that.
And perhaps recommend potential sanctions. Because a probable cause finding is not necessarily going to lead to sanctions.
Okay, we can add, I'm sure that the staff won't have any problems adding that. And then we'll reference the discipline policy.
Excellent. And then the final one is, for this policy, is line 201. I think we have a 10-day waiting period for employee investigations. Does that 10-day time frame not apply here? And should it apply in order to be consistent or not? Just a question that struck me as I read it.
Okay, so the statute is very clear when it comes to employee investigations, that before those employee investigations become a public record, that 10 days expire from the time that the investigation is closed. I would like to discuss with staff a little bit more and the superintendent if they want to make that recommendation that we add 10 days for a vendor. I will tell you that with regards to incidences of discrimination, that has its separate 119 caveat in terms of what can be and what can't be released. So it would follow some of these, not all of them, but some of these could fall under that section of 119, but that's something I think I want to talk to staff and the legal team and come up with a recommendation for the superintendent in terms of whether or not to add the 10 days for that.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple of general comments about all of the policies, including some questions about all of the policies, but that can wait until the very end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Ms. Jordan?
I would just like to also like to see the EC written out as well.
Right, equity coordinator.
Because that's all over. I do not see it at all anywhere else. So thank you.
Did you get that, Ms. Bruno?
Yes, I
Okay.
thought it was in there, but we'll make sure that it's in there.
See it
Maybe
anywhere
I
in
just
there.
didn't see it, but I looked.
I didn't see it either.
And then the last one is 6.08, which is just the rescission of 6.08 because now we have our new policy that deals with bid protest and the competitive solicitation process.
Okay. So that will be rescinded. Okay.
And that's all the only other thing, Madam Chair, is we'd like to move these forward for our second reading, so I'd like a consensus on the policies.
Okay. So board members, may we have a consensus on moving this forward to second reading? Okay.
Is that with the corrections
So-
that have been asked?
Yes, with the corrections.
With the corrections. So we have 5, and then Ms. Patrica
Yes, please.
and Ms. Morgan.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, it's unanimous consensus.
Thank you very much. And board members, we will be sending you policies on a regular basis. We're going to try to give you at least 14 days or so to review those policies. It would be very, very helpful to me and to staff that are working on these policies if you could give us your feedbacks, give us your questions, give us any changes that you may have so that when we come to, because there's going to be a lot of policies, we need to be prepared. I want to prepare the board because there's going to be a lot. So we're not going to be able to do a lot of pre-briefs and workshops. We're going to have to go through first readings, second readings, and then move forward. Especially with Neola, there's going to be a cost affiliated with them coming to board meetings and working with staff. So whatever you can do to help facilitate the process for us, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Ms. Patrica had some follow-up questions, and then Ms. Vaughn.
Yes, please, and thank you, Madam Chair. I thought that I remembered, if I may, Madam Chair, through you to the board attorney, I thought that I remembered a statement that we were going to do sort of like an en masse policy revocation and adoption all at once. How do these policies that have come in front of us today fit into that?
So these policies are Neola policies or vetted Neola policies that were shared, and we've had some legal issues that have come up that we have some fires. I mean, if I could get all of Neola policies adopted tomorrow, I would, because we have had some fires, and these are some of the fires that we need to deal with in order for us to move forward. There's going to be some other policies coming in June that are fire policies as well, and then we're going to go through the Neola process. During that process with Neola, there may be some additional fire policies that come forward that we just can't wait a year to implement. When we do the final adoption of all of the Neola policies, that's going to be in about a year, 6 months to a year, as I've been saying. So some things we just can't wait. We need to move forward with them. And then, of course, there will be all of the policies relating to the legislative changes coming as well that we can't wait for. We need to move forward with them.
So when we do that en masse policy adoption, I assume we will be re-adopting these policies as well because they will be different policy numbers, no?
It's going to be, so there's going to be two things that you're going to see. One, the format's going to be completely different. There will not be the line numbers. There will not be the subsections. These are just going to look like regular plain documents. That's one. And then the second thing that you're going to see is, repeat your question again, Ms. Patrica.
Will these policies have to be revoked and re-adopted because they will have new numbers?
Yes. And then you're going to see that they will have new numbers, so they will be aligned with the new numbers. The policies, the wording itself, we already know is Neola approved, but the numbering will be changed, correct?
Okay, thank you. And then my last comment is, yes, I have pages of requests for changes in terms of, typographical errors, grammatical errors, that kind of thing. I will send those to the board attorney and copy the board and the superintendent. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Vaughn.
Just want to say that these are Neola policies that have been approved and adopted by many districts, so I will take a look to see what the changes are.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn.
Oh, no problem. I just wanted to commend Mrs. Dupree-Bruno on a really good start. Yesterday we talked about timeline, and that was something of great importance to all of us, but some people in particular. And I also commend her on the selection of what I think you call fire policies, because I could see that some of the things that were put forth in the particular policies that we just went over clearly in great need in the district. And also I appreciate our board attorney's clear responses and her readiness to incorporate the suggested revisions after conferring with the rest of legal. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn, and I want to thank specifically business services and operations, because they had a big hand in doing these policies based on their experiences as well as best practice. So definitely to Suzanne Millay and her team, Kelly Letcher and her team, as well as Frederick Ross and his team for helping with these policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, did you have something?
Just real quick,
Ms. Giovanelli.
I just wanted to add, for me, this is about best practices and being transparent, and I just thank Ms. Bruno and her staff and team, the teamwork that went into this, and I just want to thank you for that so much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Moving right along, we are now at public comment, and it's 11 minutes after 3, so we will, Ms. Bruno, will you address the issue of public comment, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. School board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board. concerning any matter on this meeting's agenda. If you completed a public comment card, please put it in the basket provided at the back of the room. Please be advised that the board will not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. Speakers who fail to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. Any speaker continuing with such remarks will be required to relinquish the microphone per Board Policy 1.11 and may be removed from the chambers. There will be one warning. Per Board Policy 111, the time per speaker is 3 minutes. You will find a countdown on the big screens in the front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone will automatically shut off. Please state your name when you approach the microphone. Please follow staff's direction when lining up. Madam Chair, there are 2 speakers that wish to address the board at this briefing.
Thank you. Is there anyone who did not fill out a card in the audience who wishes to speak also? Okay, please call the names, Ms. Bruno.
Thank you. Will Christy DiVigili and Denise Nystrom please line up?
Lights on.
Good afternoon.
We're having a little difficulty with the timer, so I'm going to go ahead and use my phone just to make sure I have the time. Ms. DiVigili.
Madam Chair, can they please turn on the lights in the back? Lights.
Oh, there we go. Good?
Okay.
Well, the lights are not
Good
on.
afternoon.
Lights are not on, is what I was saying, not the mic.
I'll wait.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. DiVigili, I'm going to use my phone for the time, and you'll hear it ring when you're done.
It's okay. I don't even have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Christine DiVigili. I just have a couple of comments. In regards to the artificial turf, I know this is just a briefing, and there was lots of talk about, equity, and I don't know. I think it's commendable of Dr. Butts to have gone out and spent all the time. I mean, if you guys spoke to your own grants department, I mean, you know how hard it is to obtain a grant. And he obtained a grant for this and then went out and earned $800,000 in donations from the community. Obviously, this is something that the community wants. So I understand, I'm the first one to say, hey, all of our schools need all of the same or what it is that they need. But, there are exceptions to every rule, and this is something that I think you guys should get behind and support. In regards to the teacher cultural exchange program, I just am curious as to the teacher involvement, our current teacher involvement. How much do they know about this? Do they know about this? While we were sitting here, I texted a friend of mine who is a teacher in our district, and I asked her, I sent it to her, and I said, hey, what do you think about this program? Because she's an ESOL teacher. She's done ESOL. She's a reading specialist. She's plenty qualified to do something, like this. And she said, I mean, it seems like a good idea, considering we can't hire teachers right now. My only concern is their ability to teach our students and understand them. Also, the accent. I know it sounds silly, but so many students can't understand teachers with accents. My other wonder is, will these teachers be going too hard to staff schools? Because we don't really need to bring in teachers on these crazy scholarship type things and put them in easy schools that we can hire anyone local for. Just my thoughts. So those are just my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Denise Nystrom.
Good afternoon.
At the last board meeting, 3 board members, Board Member Betsy Vaughn, Board Member Giovanelli, and Board Member Gwen Gittens requested that indoor air quality not be permitted to bid on and/or be awarded contracts from the school district because the company is currently being investigated by the Department of Homeland Security. This is a company that has made campaign contributions to a particular affiliate board member. Today, the board is reviewing a draft board policy 6.0713, contractor discipline, and lines 1D and 1E discuss debarment and suspension of contractors. If a contractor is under federal investigation, would that constitute a reason for debarment or suspension? If this was current board policy, would the board have been inclined to support Board Member Vaughn's motion to pull that agenda item? In light of this draft board policy, perhaps the discussion regarding indoor air quality can be revisited. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we thank you for your comments. And at this point, we have board member comments. And I'll start with Ms. Vaughn.
Okay. Busy time of the year. We say busy for us, but I know all of us have, in one way or another, been in the schools, and we know that the school-based, the administrators, the teachers, the staff, they're preparing for not only for final exams for the students, but also there were the EOCs and the ACE and AP and IB tests, and getting everybody lined up to administer those tests, and getting the graduations in order, and all the various and sundry things that come with wrapping up a school year. But it's such a busy time, but it's such an exciting time. And I'm first of all going to again wish all of our graduates the very best, whether they're going on to some kind of continuing education, or going in the military, or going out and getting a job. Very best wishes to them. One of the things that is most on my mind, and several of us were at the Learning for Life, the banquet that they had last night, recognizing some of the top talent and some of the people, the teachers and others that volunteered for that group. That is really, it's an important program for many of our schools in teaching character education, and it was a fun event, and I'm sure some of the other people who were there, and including Dr. Bernier, who had his first taste of the group, and Tina, Tina Pegler has been doing that job for, what did she say, 18 years. And she's going strong, and put together a wonderful event. And if you haven't met her, even as a volunteer, maybe you've had some of your own children or grandchildren going through the Learning for Life program. She is one dedicated, very caring individual. And I know there are other things. There's some dinners and things. We're looking forward to State of the Schools coming up Friday, and I know there's things that I've done and things that are coming up, but the most important thing is the well wishes right now to all of our graduates, and to all of, especially our school-based personnel as they wind down this year. And I talked to one teacher last night, and I said, so how many more days is it? And he said, well, I'm not really counting, because the day after I finish school, he goes to his second job, which is the whole summer. And so I'm hoping that some of the things that we've we've been able to do as a district, help out all of our staff, no matter what level they're in, that eases some of the burdens, some of the financial burdens that they have. We can never do too much for those people. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Gittens?
I want to mention a couple of things this evening, but I just want to say, first of all, I mentioned yesterday about meeting with Mr. Frederick Ross, and I am very optimistic about the future of this district, especially his departments under his tutelage. They are getting things in order and organized, and it's just a very impressive job in 6 months, and I just wanted to mention that and all of his staff that have a lot on their backs, but they are doing an excellent job. Not that all the others aren't. I'm just singling them out today. The same with everybody. I went to Varsity Lakes for their Varsity Lakes Middle for their sports banquet. And I mean, all over, every school is having something and having all of their awards and everything, and we can't be everywhere, but we're there in spirit to cheer all of the students on. And I added it up in the last couple of weekends. I have shaken over 1,600 hands and said congratulations. Next year, from what we hear, is going to be a real doozy. There are some schools that are going to have a ton of graduates, so we'll look forward to that. The finance advisory recommendation that was made about insurance, I do want to make sure that I bring that up, and I have spoken to the superintendent about it. I don't know if you've been asked yet, Superintendent, to be the guest at our next meeting, and if at all possible, I think that would be an excellent thing, because then you can personally explain to them and answer their questions about the insurance situation and their recommendation. And I think that giving them that opportunity will help them feel that their questions and recommendations are not going unheard. So,
Can I just quickly respond? We've had conversations with all, just not you. I think it's important to know that for the community that I speak to all of you about the same issues. And I agree that that is an opportunity for us to go, but I believe that we need to share that insurance information publicly with the board first. Make sure you are fully vetted in front of the community, and then I'd be more than happy to go. Certainly would go to that meeting and talk about, we see the potential of their recommendation, but we're looking at all different avenues with which to help increase the benefits and as I said in my interview, the full compensation package to our employees. Compensation is more than salary. It's the whole package that needs to be put together, and I would appreciate that opportunity. I also have that meeting tomorrow where all those chairs and all those committee heads are together, so I may have an opportunity to address it there as well.
and I think that the committee voiced that, they would like an opportunity just to meet and talk with you in any way, regardless of that recommendation. So I just wanted to make that. And I want to give a quick shout out to the Eastleigh, bless you, culinary class. And I think every event since you came to town, that same group of students have been there serving us the wonderful goodies that we look forward to. And the superintendent mentioned before that he had, had developed a relationship with a couple of them, and I was able to be there and stand on the stage when they got their diplomas. So yesterday was, I guess, their final event as a part of that culinary group. And it's just so exciting to make those relationships with those students, to see them grow and to see them move on. And they were a bit sad yesterday that they wouldn't be there again. My favorite young man wasn't there. He's not a senior yet. He's the one that I was sitting at lunch with, and they brought out the tray of all the goodies, and there was a pink item, and I said, "What is that?" And he responded, "A cookie." Okay, so every time he sees me, he comes up and goes, "A cookie." So anyway, but it's just exciting to see how these students have grown and expanded, and hopefully one day they'll be in one of your restaurants and or running an organization from the skills that they learned. And one of the things that I said at the graduations I was a part of, that we as a district know that we have been successful when we look out on the number of students that are out in the audience that are graduating and moving on to the next part of their lives. So I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. I agree with you about those kids. They're fabulous. Well, we all know that we had the swearing in of Dr. Bernier, because he's sitting right here. Yesterday was his first meeting, and today is his full day with us, and thank you so very much. We're so happy to have you here. And those children that Ms. Gittens had spoken about were there for his celebration when he was sworn in, as well as yesterday, after they've already graduated. So yeah, that was bittersweet yesterday, but they were excited that they were taking their jackets with them because it had their name on it and nobody was going to take their jackets. So I love that about them. And as Ms. Vaughn had said, this has been extremely busy for all of us these last 2 weeks. I attended the Cape Coral Mayor Scholarship Awards banquet, where several of our students received awards, scholarships, as well as 2 from the vocational schools, which was new this year. Also, I attended Dunbar High's annual academic awards ceremony, which was just insane to see how many of those students, just one after the other, receiving so many certifications. It was so impressive. And you just know that, you know, the world is going to be better with all these kids out there. I also attended Fort Myers Middle School Showcase. Those kids just rocked the stage. They were awesome to watch. They were excited. Even the teachers participated, and that was really nice to see that. I attended a affordable housing bankers roundtable, and that was interesting. The bankers were together trying to see what is it, how can they help or assist in people obtaining attainable houses, affordable housing, workforce housing, and they will have continue conversations on that to see how we can work that out. The Apple Mentor of the Year, I was present for that. That was exciting. Dr. B probably will speak on that because I know he was there. The new teacher surprise visit. And I just really want to thank the principals and the staff, everybody who worked so hard this past weekend to make sure that everything was put together so well for each and every student. And as Ms. Gittens said, I was trying to count all those students' hands that I had the opportunity of shaking, and I think it was like around 14 or 1,500. But I would do that every day because that to me was just a blessing to see all of that joy from the families and the kids. And then last but not least, tonight we have our, at 4:30, we have our longevity award ceremony. So I'm excited to see all the people that will come through here and receive their awards. And again, I just, congratulations to our 2022 seniors, and best wishes to whatever next steps you take in your journey. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
Okay, I spoke mostly yesterday. I just still want to I'll probably say this again tonight. I just want to congratulate all the class of 2022 because I know it's a huge milestone and one they'll never forget. And I recognize and I want them to remember it and how important it is that they got, you know, they worked so hard and that they got here, and they had some obstacles with the pandemic and just, you know, and I don't know about your others, but they all kind of talked about their obstacles, mask on, mask off, in school, out of school, in school together. I mean, they made a joke of it, but that's just normal now. It's so different. But anyways, I think that they conquered, and so I wish them all the best, and I just like to thank staff because as they're winding down this year, it's really vital and important that they get the rest they need, and some go, some have jobs during the summer, so I know that the struggle is real, so, and for some, but anyways, I hope that all staff and teachers and bus drivers and attendants and janitors, everyone gets the rest they need in the vacation time that they need this summer. And I will leave it at that. I just real quick, Fort Myers High had 2 students that we honored with a diploma that didn't make it through to their graduation, and their parents were there for them, and I think it was made it really special. One of them had actually and one of the parents actually works at the Broadway Palm, and so we saw her last night, and I meant to show her that I had this on because she was giving those out at graduation for her son that was number 54, a football player, I believe. So anyways, it's still special for all of them because it was a huge milestone for all parents as well. So thank you, parents, for getting your students there to graduate. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mrs. Morgan?
I'm going to provide my comments this evening when I'm there in person. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Patrica?
Thank you. I would like to welcome Dr. Bernier to the School District of Lee County officially. I will say that in my travels across the state through both FSBA and FHSAA, people who I know well or don't even know by name, but perhaps recognize by sight, and even people who I've never met before have approached me to congratulate the board on hiring you, Dr. Bernier, and the 2 words most often repeated to describe you are honesty and integrity. And that gives me significant hope for our future. So no pressure, but welcome. And, I think you're up for the job, and I'm excited to work with you as part of this governance team. Like my colleagues, I'd like to recognize graduations. They were awesome. I mean, they were just, my face hurts from smiling after doing 4 graduation ceremonies. There were 24 students at the Donna J. Beasley Academy charter school graduation who, but for their enrollment at Donna J. Beasley, would not have earned their high school diploma. So huge shout out, huge kudos to the work that's being done out there at Donna J. Beasley Academy. And then I had 3 other traditional high school graduations, and really one of the themes that I heard in a lot of student speeches was COVID. And it was fascinating to me to hear about how COVID impacted the kids. Because as adults and as board members, as teachers, administrators, whatever, our experience with COVID was significantly different from that of children who were 14, 15, 16 years old as they were working their way through an unprecedented pandemic. So hearing their perspective was really fascinating to me. And my final comment is I'd like to give a shout out to Rick Parfit. Rick Parfit recently had an article entitled Christina Grimmie, The Forgotten Murder, How to Detect and Stop Deranged Fans, a case study for threat assessment, published in the Journal of Threat Assessment and Management. I feel fortunate to have him on our staff, especially given the increased focus on threat assessment after the Parkland incident. And I really just wanted to give him a shout out because it's not just the academics that get published. Clearly, it's also our safety and security guys as well. Those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I'll be brief, and I want to say that after 12 years of officiating at graduations, this year was the best. The people were so well behaved, everything was so well organized, and it was just an absolute pleasure to be able to attend some of the graduations. This has been a whirlwind of end-of-the-year events. We've all been busy, and my colleagues have mentioned some of the events that we've attended, so I won't repeat those. I do want to say congratulations to the grads of 22, and I wish you a spectacular future. And I want to say thank you to our district and our school staff, because our teachers and administrators and paras and bus drivers and everybody has a hand in giving the kids an opportunity for success, and we appreciate your work and your dedication. The other thing is that several people have mentioned that they're retiring, so I wish them a great time, and now it's a time to be wild and free and turn the page and do something different. And for those who stay with us, again, we look forward to you having a safe, healthy, and hydrated summer, and look forward to the beginning of the next school year. And lastly, do welcome Dr. Bernier officially to our governance team, and happy that you're here. Everything we hear is positive, so we do have hope for the future. And with that, I will turn it over to Attorney Dupree Bruno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay, and Dr. Bernier.
Well, first of all, I do have a few things, and I apologize to staff. I am keeping you a little bit longer, but I just want to take the opportunity to thank my 7 bosses. All of you have been extremely supportive. It's been a pleasure over the short period of time here as a consultant, and in the very short period of time of being a superintendent, to get to know all of you a little bit better, talk about our hopes and dreams for this community and for our students, and to focus on those. I too want to take a shot at graduation and tell you that all 6 of them were amazing that I was able to get to. It's a pretty busy weekend, but I think we really have to concentrate not only on the parents who are so supportive for our students, because you've all talked about the students and their trajectory towards the future, but to our principals, our senior advisors, our graduation consultants, meaning the staff member that got tagged with making sure the principal and everybody was in the right space at the right time and everything was coordinated. So the graduation coordinators, and to the teachers who either line the edge of the students and participate in the actual ceremony, or working behind the scenes to help individuals like me get robed up and making sure that my hood looks correct. And there's just so much effort and work that goes on in those programs, and as flawless as all of them were, talks about the extensive amount of additional work that school staff puts into those programs. I walked out of the last one Sunday night, and I made it a point to shake every hand of a teacher who was lined up congratulating their graduates, because it doesn't happen without them. And in the course of the pandemic, whether you were in Southwest Florida or Clark County schools, it was the same pandemic. And the stress and the trials and tribulations on our staff, they really need to be celebrated. One of the graduations was adult ed. I want to just make a note of an amazing partnership that's out there for our community to understand. In our ACE programs, which is an adult ed, and normally winds up with recovering young people and young adults who need to come back to get their GEDs. The graduation ceremony was at FSW, and the FSW president was there reminding all of our graduates and providing a QR code inside their scroll. They have a GED program that specifically targets those learners to have one free semester at FSW to be paid for. So they can choose their next course of study, and FSW with open arms is welcoming those students and keeping them on track to an AA or an AS. Learning for life, that was an amazing experience. Thank you to all who told me you're going to meet somebody and we're not going to tell you anything about her. I knew exactly who you wanted me to meet when I went into the room, and she's amazing. She's a powerhouse of energy, and it was so clear. But I take us back to the young man who read his speech to all of us. He touched our souls last night, and that's a young man we need to all keep an eye on and make sure that we're all checking in on, because what he's overcome so far, he still has a long journey ahead of him, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to continue to mentor and support him moving forward. I will mention Anna LaMotta, the Mentor Teacher of the Year, as well as our new Teacher of the Year, Marilyn Garcia. that was a great opportunity, and thank you to Academic Services and Student Services for that opportunity to go do something really fun last Friday. So much of what we do sometimes is not always fun, but it's for the right things and the right reasons. Also, the Train to Gain graduation, which is a program specifically in partnership with us and the city of Fort Myers that helps young people graduate. I think there were about 8 to 11 young men that were graduated from the program this year. And the cool part is they're now trained as roofers, plumbers, drywallers. They really received all sorts of support to be trade ready, and every single one of those individuals, with the help of the Mid-Florida Technical College, every single one of those young people left that graduation with a job for Monday morning, and that's amazing. Lastly, just on the construction side, so often we talk about our new schools, but I had a really amazing opportunity to go out to like a 0% completion meeting, meaning we're just getting started, with Franklin Park. That is a school building that is desperately needed, a full-blown renovation, and I know many of the board members were present too. What a great opportunity for that community to begin to celebrate their new school building that'll be ready in another year. And lastly, I just remind everybody that we are all always about academics, but sometimes there are lots of hooks, whether it be band, ROTC, or all sorts of other things. One of the hooks is athletics that keeps young people in school and focused, and Island Coast at 7 p.m. tonight will be in the state finals in baseball over at Hammond Stadium. And the best gift you could give a superintendent is to be done in time so that I might be able to get over there and see a couple of innings and maybe be there when they win the championship to congratulate them. If not, I'll be rooting for a lightning or rain delay, which should put them into the late hours like last night. They didn't finish playing ball till after midnight last night. So looking forward to the opportunity for this evening's meeting, and thank you for the point of privilege to talk a little bit about my experience during the first week as well. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Okay, this evening at 4:30, we have longevity awards, followed by an action meeting at 6 o'clock. And seeing no further business and hearing no objection, this meeting is adjourned.